Hi, it's Wednesday, and my monitor is there we go. There were some things in the way, and I'm continuing to work on the Submarine this week. Had almost been able to work on a Nines fungible token, kind of a Nines coin related to our Dungeons and Dragons campaign, but wasn't able to prep it in time. Yep, I will do a flip in just a bit. I'm just explaining why I couldn't do the coin that you suggested that I do. I could have gotten it primed. I probably should have just done that, but we wanted to paint it gold and didn't want any brush marks on it or anything, so I thought I had some metallic gold spray paint down here, but it turned out that no, that was something that was cleaned out when we cleaned out the cabinets a couple of years ago. So I remembered something that wasn't there any longer, and so the Nines coin is going to have to wait. So we're back to the Submarine. There is just a whole lot of, as you can see, parts here, and it's chugging along slowly. Different colors, different places. I can prep pieces and get them ready to prime. I primed a few things that are in here, in this little container of not losing parts while I move them from one place to the other. I have parts here that need to be cleaned up and get ready to install. Many different colors to paint, and so I might just do like kind of just move from one thing to the other and fill in the time, because it all needs to get done eventually. So I will be plugging away at that kind of thing. These are some bulkheads that I painted at the end. This is the light blue paint, and even the one that I was concerned about turned out to look, it's okay. So we'll be able to move along painting other colors on those today. But first, the flip. These are fragments of a stir stick, a paint stir stick, that I'm going to be using to do some sanding. These are now small-sized sanding blocks, or small-sized sanding tasks. One of the many miscellaneous things to be done today. So I will flip that. Flips. I could just keep flipping this, for, I don't know, I could flip this now for maybe another 45 minutes and keep myself from having to do things. So let's just go over some of the things that could be done. As we noted before, I cemented the bunks into the bunk room. Whoop, that's the bad side. That's the good side. They don't look too bad. It'll do as much as it needs to be. The floor looks okay. I did fill in the gaps on the bottom here, and this whole thing is going to be painted dark gray because there's just an empty space kind of underneath this with like maybe a radiator or something, I'm not sure. So one of the miscellaneous things I could do today and will do is set this down here so I don't mess up the paint, and sand the bottom of it and paint the bottom dark gray. Okay, so that's one of the many things. This particular thing, this is not cemented in yet. It was just there to help position things. But the floor here is not, like all the rest of the floor, where you won't be able to see it very much at all. That's just fine, but the one spot, the one area where you can really see the floor well, is not good. So I'm going to sand that down, and either then, depending on how it looks, we'll either recoat it or just leave it if it looks okay. Then I have a whole bunch of pieces like this and the ones in here that are part of the galley, which is why it says sub-galley and miscellaneous, because the galley parts are primed, and I don't know if you can see them here, but the way it fits together is there's cold storage, room temperature storage, and a galley kitchen that goes here. So I can begin putting a base coat of white on most of that. Most of that's going to be base coated white. I can also fit parts together, but that needs to be done. I don't know what's going on there. Sometimes you just see flaws where there weren't any before. That needs a little touch of that floor colored paint back here. Part of it is just going to be figuring out what color to paint things, like this, for example, here goes here, okay? And the part that faces the mess hall, where these tables sit, is painted a light blue because that's the color of the walls there. But then there is this storage unit here that is behind these doors. Okay, let's go here. And that doesn't fit, but I'll have to make it fit. It doesn't even line up very well. So the trick here, it will be to find out where that line is. There's a little bit of give because of the width of the wall, but this is supposed to come together like that. Okay, and the inside of it, on that side here, we actually got meat hanging there. That is white, and the rest of it is blue. And in fact, the doors will be that way too. The outside of the doors and the outside of this unit. Okay, so those are the outsides of the doors. Those will be blue, but the inside of the door, which is the side where the storage unit is, will need to be white. So this little bit is multicolored, but this one needs a lot of work. It's got these little mold circles on it that need to be sanded off, flashings, little sticks. It doesn't fit in the gap. So before I can even paint some of these things like this, I need to fix this part so that I can mark where the dividing line is, right? So that I can paint one bit of it white and the other bit of it blue. And then there's this door. I can paint the door ahead. That's just painted a light gray color. The door handle is highlighted red, and then there's this little window in it. And I've done one of those before. I just put a little tiny dot of chrome paint in there, and it makes it look like the window. The other side has the other side of the door, the hatchway. But the other side of this has the same sort of issue in that there's a doorway. In this case, I actually had, I think, prepped the doorway. These are the bits that are primed. No, that doorway isn't primed. I'm going to put bits back in so I don't lose them. Okay, that piece is oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. There's actually different than I thought. The doorway is here, okay? And this goes here, like that. But this entire section here is open all the way from front to back. And then in the back here, I have to look at the hull of the submarine. Back here is, I think there's like some control panels or something that are on the hull, and they were confusing to me. I didn't know why they were there, but now that I start piecing these pieces together, okay, it becomes clear that there is another room back here with a totally different function, and that room will probably be painted green, but there's no wall across there. Okay, there's a stairwell that goes up. It's actually somewhat supported by this. So theoretically, at least, this entire section should be painted the light blue, because it's like an officer's meeting room kind of thing, a living area, not a control area. Yeah, I'll have to see what's back here and what color I'm going to paint that. But again, all of this is, one thing is dependent on another thing on another thing. It's just how this is. This looks like there's this officer's meeting room. There's like a blackboard or a whiteboard or something for them to write on, right next to a circle that needs to be cleaned off. Yeah, so the more I look at this, actually, the more complicated it all becomes. Lovely. Yeah, so what should I start with? I'm going to start with something simple so that the coffee can kick in. And, no, I don't break anything. So I'm going to start by sanding this down, because, like, what can go wrong, right? So I'll get one of these sanding block things like this, because I want it to be flat. And I'll go pick out some sandpaper like this. This is sandpaper, so why not use it, right? Wrap it around here. I do sort of, this is one of these really primitive kinds of things that we do when an old person does an old submarine. And I'm going to just start sanding and see what happens. And what's happening is that some of the white stuff is sanding off, which is what's supposed to happen. Yeah, well, so this is relaxing sanding that has a little bit to do with the galley. This is one of the misc bits. This is one of the misc bits on the banner here for this episode. You start to see the outline of the place where the filler put in, and if it's at the same level as the surface around it, the surface around it should be sanded like that. So there, and there's a little bit of the brown paint that got sanded off. That's just kind of embedded in there, and that's just fine. I'll just sand the other three, and then this will be ready to be painted. Then the dark brown, the dark gray, and I know that's the color because the bottom is the same color as the hull. And then you might be saying, no, why are you just doing all of this? It just seems like it's not essential. You hardly ever see this part, but it's one of those things where I know it's there. And so, yeah, so there's little bits of gray there. That's the plastic from the bunk above it. And then here, so I'm just going to sand, the paint got pretty thick there, so I'm just going to sand that down. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. That's where I tested the brown paint to see if it would, the brownish paint to see if it would actually work as the floor color. And it did. So there we go. Put that paper towel down for two reasons. One is so that I didn't rub off the paint on the top of the bunks as it moves around. Gives it a softer surface, right? And the other is to catch some of the sanding dust so that I can just wad it up and throw it away and get it out of the way. Anyway, this is relaxing painting with dice and dungeons, and usually, like almost all of the time, I am painting minifigs or dungeon tiles for our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. But there's a new set of tiles that was just what was the word? The file, the printing file was just completed, and the tests were just produced yesterday. And I'll show those to you in just a minute after I'm done with the sanding here. Just, I'm glad I did that. There's a lot of dust there. Paint and plastic and everything. And I should probably actually wipe that off with some water or whatever, but whatever. Paint over the edge. This edge is going to be painted the dark gray as well, because this is where the hull is cut away. Okay, it's cut away there so that you can see the inside of it. Oh, yeah, I almost just threw all the dust that I was carefully collecting on the paper towel here, because it's an old guy doing stuff, and it's always interesting to see how things can get screwed up. Okay, there's that. That hole there is where the staircase goes up. I am looking forward to installing the staircase with trepidation. That is the word I'll use for it. Because there's this tiny little peg here that has to fit into that little hole. And that's definitely not enough to hold it in place. And then this is supposed to line up precisely with the square hole on this deck here. And, well, you can just see, there's hardly any clearance. I don't know how I'm going to do that, to be honest. Probably devote an entire show to failing to figure out how to do that. But that's a different time. So this is painted dark gray. There are other things going to be painted dark gray too, so I'm going to get those ready. Because, for example, here, I want to fill these in. I talked about that before. When all these pieces are cemented in, I'm going to do the same thing I did here, is to fill in the bottom. So they're smooth, because this, especially along this edge, will definitely show. So there's that, yeah. This edge here, right along here, has to be painted the dark gray too, because this is a cutaway. The cutaway happened here. So that's the hull color. There's, I don't know, some sort of either a paint lump, yeah. Big uneven there. Use the X-Acto knife on that. rather than the sandpaper, so I don't start removing paint from the floor. Anyway, so among the many things that need to be done is that needs to be painted gray. Of course, there isn't any reason why I can't do that. And then pull the paint out again later to paint the rest of it. This here, this little tab here, needs to be painted light blue. That's part of the wall, and there's supposed to be a little door there. What percentage are we at with the sub? I would say at this point, 17%, right? There's just this and the control room above it have just tons of parts that need to be painted in different colors. And as we'll see with the galley, I'm going to put a first coat of white on it sooner than later. I'm just kind of avoiding that a little bit, I guess. The stoves and counters and things like that are going to be painted white, and then there's just all this detail, like pots and pans and spice canisters and cupboard doors and things that need to be painted later. But I can't do that until it's white. So there's that. And then there's all these other little bits where it's not really clear what color they need to be. And so I'm going to have to piece things together and work on it that way. So I've got this. I know that the hatchway is gray. I know that part of it is white and part of it is blue. So, for example, if I'm going to get the white paint out and I know that this little bit here is going to be painted white, I might put this on. I might just do that. I might just take this doorway that is supposed to go here. I might just file it down enough so that I can actually get it to fit, which it doesn't. Okay, so that I can see where the line is supposed to be. And then I could mark that with a little piece of tape and paint that part white at the same time I paint the rest white. Those are things I might do. I might just do that now. Why not? At least, if not completely clean this up, clean it up enough so that I can mark the other part, the other piece where it's painting. Yeah, there's just so much little stuff. Once this is done, I would say I'd be like 25% done then. And the control room is the next bit, and that's almost, but I think this deck is the most complicated of all of them. And the control room is not complicated, but there's a lot of detail. Just tiny, tiny little bits of detail with all the gauges and buttons and everything in the control room. So that's what will be there, is not so much like finding and prepping the pieces as much as painting the detail on them. Getting rid of those little mold marks, those circles. Anyway, this is going to be a miscellaneous thing because sometimes I can't, like I might have already primed a piece, but I can't paint it until another piece is prepped so I can see where the color demarcation line is. Yeah, so, the torpedo room was good practice, and that turned out to be somewhat complicated, but this whole galley area is just a lot of little stuff. And it's especially been because these parts just don't fit. The molding process was bad. Some of them were warped. I had to trade them out from another model, one of the other models. Like this bulkhead. The other one was like curved, really badly warped. one that came with the model I'm working on here with lighter gray on. A lot of these parts in the galley with these tabs on the bottom, which are supposed to help you line it up, they're not in the same place on this as they are on the floor. That required a bunch of things. So part of, filing things down and fitting them is all part of modeling. You would expect that with a plastic model like this, you wouldn't be doing nearly as much of this kind of stuff as you would, say, with an old-fashioned balsa wood model, where you just got chunks of wood and a picture with the instruction, sand this block so it looks like this picture. That was the equivalent of ready to build back in especially the 30s and 40s and up through the 50s, before plastic injection molding became a major thing. So as I will continue to complain about, the thing that bugs me most is that there are these circular mold marks everywhere in places that are highly visible, and you don't have these little circles in realities. I'm spending a lot of time filing those away, like here. Maybe you can see it. Actually, that may be the case. It may be Submarine entire month, but you can see it here. There's a circle, and that unless that was a clock or something, and it's not, it's just a mold mark, that was not part of the Submarine. It's just a flaw. In this particular case, it's some of these are raised up above the surface. That's fine. You can just sand down to it. These are inset, and so the whole surface needs to be held down to the level of the circle so that the circle disappears. And the file is rough. It leaves marks. So I've got some really fine emery cloth, like 1600 grit or something, that I use then, especially these spots that show, that I can sort of polish it. It doesn't get rid of all the little scratches and things, but after it's painted, it looks okay. It's always interesting sanding something, is you want to go like this, but then I keep reminding myself, if I can see the spot, I'm not sanding it, am I? So the reason I'm prepping this piece is because I'm planning to put at least a first coat of white on the galley. The stove and the storage rooms and the cabinets and things like that. All the pieces that go here, essentially. And as you can see, there's a lot of them. Okay? All of these bits are part of the galley, and they turn white, like that countertop there. And this that I'm doing is here, and the reason I'm prepping it is because I need to have this fit in place so I can see this is part of the storeroom here. On this bit, this needs to be white and this needs to be blue. I need to know where the dividing line is. And I can't do that until this piece fits, because this piece is the dividing line. And I found this when I was test fitting some of these pieces before, is like I set this one in the middle. Okay, the nice big one is where the stove is and cabinets and things. Hey, old Brogger. Yeah, we're still doing the Submarine. And after I'm done with filing this bit and getting it to fit, because this is one thing leads to another with this. This piece has to fit in order to find out where the dividing line is between the blue and the white paint on this bulkhead. And I discovered that after I had primed this and said, okay, well, let's start painting. But no, that isn't going to happen until I know where to paint it. Getting this, after filing off the mold mark, I'm just going to polish it a little bit. What? Sooner than later. No, it depends on what your definition of later is, I guess. This is actually the first Sub Wednesday in a couple of weeks, isn't it? I'm just going to test to see if this is anywhere even closer to fitting than it was before. As I had noted many times in the past, these pieces, yeah, see this tab, the big tab fits okay, but the smaller tab doesn't fit because it's bigger than the slot. Lovely, right? Probably the best thing to be said about this galley and all of the parts that go into it is that the backs of them, a lot of them don't show. Okay, so I only have to paint one side. That's saying something, and that's the best you can say about this. Need to figure out why this isn't fitting. It's hard to show you what's going on here. But there's two tabs. There's this larger one that goes in that hole, and then there's a smaller one here. And the smaller one, yeah, it doesn't, it is not, it doesn't, it's not the right size. It's just bigger than the gap, and I had already cleaned out the paint, so that's not the big issue. But what has been happening is that over the last couple of weeks, Alexis has been working on the print file for a new set of dungeon tiles. Brand new, something we hadn't done before. So these are novel, and I promise I will show them to you sometime as soon as this very frustrating little piece goes into place. Almost like this. It isn't there. Now I can kind of force it in, but what's happening here is that this side, it doesn't line up. So this side of it actually protrudes a little bit over the edge. X-Acto knife. The one with the tiny little pointy blade. Okay, well, I'll try this one. There might be into the corner there. It's getting in the way. So these are street tiles. They are, I'll show you one. This. You can see a nice texture on there. It's like cobblestones. And this is a completed one. Yeah, let me let me show you the box top. This is actually, that's why this model is really pretty cool. And the box top is, you know, almost like what it will look like. But these street tiles are what's going to be coming up next, these cobblestones. And I haven't painted one before. I don't know what we'll be getting into, but you can see the bottom here would be just like the rest. Ball magnets go in these spots here so that they, you know, hold together and connect just like all of the rest. And we'll be making streets then that we can walk on in our, yeah. You do a lot of stuff with foam. That's really cool. We've never tried that, and now we have become firmly committed to using the 3D printer to do these tiles this way. Anyway, we now have 2 of them. Okay, 2 of them, and I'm expecting that there will be dozens of them, and I'll get to paint them, and then I'll be able to use a big brush and gray paint and stuff. But let me show you what this model is supposed to end up looking like. I'll be right back. This is 1960s vintage model. I have 2 of them, actually 3, because I wanted to find enough parts that worked. And let's see, can't get the camera far enough away, but yeah, you see the entire inside. That's pretty neat. So you can just flip them over. Yeah, isn't it amazing? This is the same model I built when I was in grade school. I mean, it's not physically exactly the same because I built that one and this one's not built, but this is the 1960s model. And I think I did the first one when I was like in 7th or 8th grade. So yeah, you can, there's this hull, and I'll show you the part that I've actually got done so far in a little while. And then there's the other hull that, well, because there isn't any fire, okay, there's a spring actually in one of these tubes. Oh, yeah, well, why don't you, that'd be kind of cool. We could actually link that maybe. Yeah, one of these tubes, there's 16 of them because it carried 16 Poseidon missiles. I mean, Polaris missiles. The Polaris was the first submarine launch missile, single warheaded missile, replaced by Poseidon, which was a little bigger and multiple warheaded. But one of these has a spring in it, and these hatches open up, and there's a little missile. I actually have 2 of them. You push down into it, latch the spring, release the spring, and it shoots up. And what that means is that it goes up about 7 or 8 inches above the top of the submarine and then gets lost as it falls on the floor and rolls under a piece of furniture. But yeah, it actually does shoot up through there, which is kind of surprising. These things have to align, otherwise it doesn't work. But I think that's in quotes because there's no fire involved. But it does shoot it up. So far, what I have done is I got this part done here, except for the very, very front bulkhead, but this part and this part here. And what I'm working on now are these sections down here. That's the bunk room down at the bottom. There's a ballast tank. This is the galley behind this blow up, and it does not look like that. Believe me, the detail does not look like that when it's magnified. And then there's that. So when I'm done with this, I'll have done this and this and this, and then the control room here becomes challenging, not because there's as many parts as there is down here, and parts that don't fit. There's a chunk of bunks, which is always a pain in the butt, and the control room, but the control room does have panels with all sorts of dials and buttons and things, and those show. this is set up so you can see all of that. So I'm going to work on that, and that's going to be a, kind of a painting challenge. Once this is done, then you can see the rest of it becomes a lot simpler. There's a whole lot of tubes, right? And a whole lot of mechanical parts in the engine room, but those are kind of monochromatic, and there's the detail on it doesn't involve a lot of different colors. Okay. The pipes and everything all have to be fit together, but it's pretty one color. And even the reactor room, this is supposedly showing a cutaway of the reactor, right? You have to play with the paint. I'm going to play with the paint to make it kind of look glowy. And then the liquid, the superheated steam goes through this coil and heats the water. And there's just one pipe, right? All of this, one pipe with the superheated steam goes into here. And all of this, apparently, all of this takes whatever is in this one pipe and turns it into moving the propeller. Anyway, that's the model, and I have done hardly any of it. So that's just moving along very slowly. Get this done. Want to see the part I finished? Show you that. Just to show you that something's actually getting done, right? So yeah, that's the conning tower of the sail and the forward torpedo room. Those are things that are actually done and installed. The parts I'm working on now go down here. Okay, and I have no idea why there's white paint on that. Oh, that's a filler. Okay, yeah, I'm scraping that off. When this was broken off of the tree, it took a chunk of the hull out with it. So when this all goes in here, this part goes top of here. There's another bulkhead in the back there. So, between these bits down here, okay, it's lower. There it is. Really? Okay, I'm confused now. That should go on top. I guess it goes like that. It does. It goes on the top because it always supports from the bottom. That's why it's upside. It's backward. These are in the front. Okay, I don't have this wrong. That's supposed to go. That's supposed to be glued in from the. That doesn't make sense. Why would there be that ridge there, right? Everything's lined up right. And there's this gap in the detail here, right? Supposed to line up. I guess that's okay. So what's happening here is something I've just discovered, is that there's a doorway here. You can actually see this panel when this is put together. You're going to be able to see that panel. You won't be able to see that at all. I don't know why it's there, but I'll be able to see that. And so I'm going to have to paint that control panel color. And then there's like dials and switches and things, and I'll have to paint those. And I didn't really notice that before. And it isn't even where you're going to be able to see through is right here. So it'll be off to the side. But that is something that I'll paint because it's possible that you might be able to see it. Underneath here is a gyro room, and that'll have to be painted too. these pipes and things will just be painted the hull color. And then the whole control room goes, the deck goes right here. And then these periscopes and radio antenna go into tubes like this in the control room below. Anyway, yeah, the fitting of this is just really a challenge. Anyway, that's what's done so far. And then once I get to here, okay, that's all of this, the bunks and the control room and the galleys and everything. Then there's this one big room full of missile tubes, and then the reactor room, and then all those other things. And those will move along probably like 5 times faster than this now, because there aren't that many parts to fit. And more importantly, there isn't that much detail to paint. So these rooms right now, yeah, I mean, a lot of things come together. And so I'm not going to be worried too much about the wrinkled sheets of the bunk room. My edges and lines are not really perfect here. My dust control isn't either. Anyway, yeah, I should probably leave this here and keep it covered while I am sanding and filing over here instead of doing it there. I need to sand this down too. This piece of floor shows. It's practically the only part of the floor that really is obvious, and it's also the, okay, good, that was a piece of dirt, not paint. It's the part that shows, and it's the part that's not painted well. Nice, right? Yeah, so I was playing around with this piece because this piece goes against this bulkhead, and this piece defines where the dividing line of the colors are. So I can't get that line until I get this piece to fit. It really does. There. Okay, so that goes there, and then this goes here. Okay, and they come together nicely. This side here is painted white, and this side here is painted light blue. So I need to know where that line is. And I will mark that with a little pen. Get these pieces to fit right there. That is the center line of the color. And I'm going to put a tiny little mark on the bottom. Okay. And I'll wipe that off. So here, what I want is everything on that side of that dot to be white, and everything on this side of the dot to be blue. This goes in here. Yeah, so I am hoping to paint a bunch of white stuff a little bit later today, and so I wanted to mark this so that I could paint that bit as well. Okay, here, these are the bits of the galley. So this has to be painted white on both sides. So I'll start with one and go to the other later. These are only painted on one side. These are doors. These are painted blue. But these are the galley bits. So I go like this. And those will be painted white, and then all of that detail, the cabinets and cabinet handles and everything, those will all then need to be detailed. And then this door, close the door, and that just goes here, basically blocking the view yeah, there. It blocks off this corner, so you can't see what's behind there, whatever it is. So the galley bits go here, and the storeroom's here, and then this bulkhead is here, separating that from this room, which goes all the way through to the back. And then here's a separate room with some bunks and a library and things like that. So this stuff is the white, and then this has to be painted on both sides. Okay. Decide what to do next here. There isn't really any good way of doing it. One thing, no, this is something else. I'm seriously modifying this little table thing, which goes on top of this behind the coffee urn, and it totally blocks the view to this part of the galley. And this part of the galley has amazing detail on it, little cupboards, pots and pans, sink, faucet, shelves, cabinets and things. And I want, if I'm going to go through the trouble of painting the detail on here, even if it's moderately badly painted, I want to be able to see it. So this table, and it makes sense that there is one here behind the coffee urn, I'm going to cut it down to the top of this one, and it's kind of stupidly thick. I'm actually going to file it down so it's thinner, okay, and then polish that. So what I'm going to be trying to do today, and part of this is, where's the other bunk bit? There. This has to be painted blue as well. Is I'm going to, rather than just freehand some of this, I'm going to use some painter's tape and mask it off just to mark the line so I can see where it is. I'm going to do that a little later. I don't feel like painting quite yet. I will just be honest about that, so I'm not going to. I'm going to continue working on that. Was covered with dust, which is why I'm getting dust on everything else. I'm going to continue on working on prepping stuff a little bit before I start painting. This all has to be done at some point or another anyway, so it doesn't matter which order I do it in. So let's do it in an order that feels a little comfortable. Now, there used to be a nice roll of painter's tape that was narrower, and that's gone, right? So. I probably should be using this more often, but I haven't really run into a situation where it needs to be at. What I'm doing here is, and hopefully part of what why I haven't done it is this is supposed to not pull the paint off, but that's what we're going to find out, right? Is I'm going to mask the line of this room. The bunks go across here. This I'm going to be sanding this. And so this is kind of marking where the sanding goes. I don't end up sanding a whole lot of stuff that shouldn't be sanded. And all I'm going to be trying to do here is I'm going to use some really fine grit paper, and I don't know if it shows up on camera or not, but this part of the floor is like seriously flawed. Just paint built up here. As I was brushing it, all of this looks nice and smooth and even where I had brush marks from doing the detail here. But that right there, right where you will see it the most, it's not good. Oh, and there's little chips and flaws on the front here that I need to touch up just a little bit, and I will do that. But I don't know how this is going to go. I might be able to sand that down and the whole floor will look really good, or I might need to sand this down quite a lot and then repaint that one section. I'm not really sure. We will find out soon, and I need to find the right grit. This is kind of the stuff I've been using for polishing. That's way too coarse. Yeah, I think I'll use the polishing level cloth. Improvised sanding block in here. Yeah, I'm just going to start rubbing away at this and see what happens. And it evens it out okay, but it changes color. I don't know why that is. And it's okay if it changes the color if the whole thing is a different color. If it's slightly oranger than yellower than the rest, I mean, I'm okay with that. But the whole thing has to be the same color. Maybe that's just sanding dust, though. Those are the areas that were higher than the rest of the floor. But definitely making it even. I'm just going to keep at this for a little bit to see what happens. Because I'm getting rid of the flaws. But in the process, it's changing the color a little bit. In a somewhat unpredictable way. What I'm going to have to decide is whether that's a look that I'm okay with or not. playing with this, you know, trying to get it as even as I can. There's like 3 coats of paint on here, so that's just, there's plenty of paint. Especially with this super fine grit paper. And I don't really want to be piling the paint on here necessarily, except right around the edges, you know, where there's a little bit of flaking away. And I can just touch tiny little spots on that. But I think what's happening is where the paint was thick, it's now thin. What I might end up having to do is just put one more coat, an extremely fine, you know, extremely thin little piece, one more coat of paint, because it's just uneven now. At least it's not lumpy. They got rid of the lumps. Okay, and so what worst comes to worst is that if I put a really thin coat on here, I mean, just to create a uniform color and get rid of the sanding flaws and stuff. Do that, then I think it will be okay, and if not, then I'll just sand it down again. I guess that's the nice thing about doing this kind of painting stuff, is that you know, if it's not looking good, you can always redo it. So what I'm telling myself here is that I'm just doing surface prep. Doing surface prep for a final coat on this piece of floor. This piece of the floor, unfortunately, is the most visible of all of the floor. Isn't that the way? The thing that is the way, that the part that's most visible is the one that's most flawed. That part is highly visible as well, and there's this little, like a bubble there or something. Sorry, you know, this isn't very interesting, I'm afraid, but this is relaxing paint prep in the officers' quarters, I think, of the Submarine. I'm going to move this tape so that it is right down the center of these slots, because those are where the walls, the bulkheads, will actually be going. I'm just evening this out, making it as smooth as I can before I put the very thin hopefully, very last coat of paint on this section of the submarine area. need to also clean this thoroughly. Yeah, I mean, once that's painted, and if it's all very nicely the same color and same gloss, that's the important thing. Be okay. I don't understand that thing there. I think there's a spot right there. See it? Dark spot. Is your internet connection going bad? Yeah, actually, it's not just been today. It's been ours went out a fairly decent chunk of yesterday. I don't know, maybe it's been the rain. The internet can't stand moisture in the air. I'm not sure. So we become more and more dependent on the internet all the time, and then the internet becomes unreliable, and then what we're left with, right? What are we left with then? Okay, I think I'm just going to clean this off and then put that last coat of paint on it. One last coat of paint, and hopefully that will work. If not, I'm not doing anything to the plastic. That's fully intact. Okay, so we'll just let this set for just a bit until I'm ready to do some painting. And got it somewhere. Put this here. What I want to do, this is a major modification of a part, is this table is terrible in terms of its appearance and its location. So I'm going to be reducing it in size. I'll be cutting the top part off and then filing down what is then going to become the new top so that it's a little bit thinner. Okay, and then that will be ready for installation just behind the coffee urn. And I'm going to do this next because and I'm actually going to file down the front of this. Maybe not. We'll see what it looks like when it's reduced in size. There's like a divot in the... It's not flat. Okay. So how am I going to do this? I'm going to use an X-Acto knife and cut off as much of this down to the second tabletop as I can, so that the filing of it isn't going to take forever. And I'm thinking I might be able to cut through this. If not, I'm going to get a little saw and cut it off with that. Yeah. Yeah, this is going very, it's cutting through. I need to... What I really need to do as I'm doing this is, one, not break it all off. To have a nice, clean cut on it. So I'm going to turn it over and cut on this side as well, so that it doesn't just snap off. And I want a nice clean cut on this, and I want to not cut my finger. So if I can accomplish both of those things, getting the top of this off with a decently clean cut and not having blood on the show, I will declare that a success. And again, the reason I'm doing this is that the piece just looks stupid. The first time I saw it, it was like, what is this supposed to be? Some sort of serving trays, serving shelves or something? But why are they so thick? Well, they're so thick because that's as thin as they get. That's the thickness of the molding. There we go. That's one half of it. And now we'll do the other side the same way. I'll cut it. Start on both sides so that if it snaps, it doesn't snap on the end. And then as I piece the parts together, there's this beautifully detailed galley kitchen, and this sits right in front of it so that you can't see the beautifully detailed galley kitchen that I will beautifully paint, sort of at skill level 1.5. So I am modifying this piece from its original to what I consider to be tolerable. There. So now it's much shorter. And I can show that to you in a little bit, but I'm going to, before I do that, I'm going to be filing the top of this so that the top is now going to be even again and somewhat thinner. It will take a while. There's a lot of plastic to take off there. And no place to hold it. So it's all together, one of those modeling challenges. I left a fair amount of plastic on the top there when I cut it because I didn't want it to break off into the surface and then have to try to fill it. This looks like I'm going to be doing one side at a time because that's the only way I can hold it. I'm hoping I can get it even enough so that it looks even enough. And this will be a huge improvement in terms of the appearance of this and the ability to see what's behind it. Getting the whole surface, the whole top of this flat and even, as much as can be done, given the inherently uneven nature of the part. Yeah, this is good. So at the same time, I'm making the top of it thinner, so that it looks a little bit more in scale with the rest of it. Get a piece of sandpaper, lay it flat, and just try to rub it against it. And once I get the top even and without little divots in it and all, I'll use the very fine-grained sandpaper and polish it. It's getting close. There's just a little spot there that's lower than the rest of it. This is so tiny that it's going to be painted white. I'm just going to paint it white when I do the rest of the white coating the first coats without priming it. Some of these are so small, for example, like the chairs that you haven't seen yet, that just you can barely even grip them anywhere. Okay, so I think this is looking okay. The thickness is less than it was. It's about down to, I would say 2/3 of what it was before. And the top of it is gone. So if one were to look at this model, they would never know that it was supposed to be other than what it is. Yep, thing's lost. Pushing sandpaper out before. Okay, there it is. Very, very fine, like 1600 grit. It doesn't make it shiny. I suppose, if I kept at it long enough, it would make it shiny like the original surface. But it gets rid of the scratch marks from the file and the course. There. Oh, actually, it does. Look. It's pretty nice, isn't it? It's almost like the original plastic. Let me show you what this did. I'm really quite pleased at how that came out. Take this. It goes on top of this. That's the coffee urn. It goes behind it like this. Okay. And so that's like a little serving tray kind of thing. Stuff's underneath it. Stuff's on top of it. But what it does is, if I take this, okay, see all that detail on it? If it goes where it belongs, right there, you can see where the other table just covered everything up, and how now it doesn't. Little bit of primer paint. It's amazing. The tolerances on some of these are really small. There we go. That's how it will fit. And so now you can see that it covers up no more than the coffee urn does, instead of covering the whole thing. So I'm glad I did that. It really looks a lot better than it would have if I hadn't made that huge modification. Yeah, it's okay. I just need to figure out how to hold it. Well, I paint it white. That's the problem with these. Some of these pieces are just so tiny. I can't bury it in this. I can do that, but then parts of it doesn't hold enough just in that little peg. So I'll try the alligator clip trick and see if that works. Okay, I'm going to paint this floor this color again. Just put another coat on it. I think it's, I'm still not satisfied with it. It's still lumpy. I've been using the really fine sandpaper on it, and I'm just going to keep doing that. I keep saying that the problem with this is that Okay, those some. Okay, well, you know, playing around with it. I just need to repaint it now. Okay, so this is going to be painted the floor color, the same color that the rest of the floors were painted. I've got some things that need to be painted white. Oh, yeah, I've got this tape out. I'm going to do this. I should call this relaxing. Because okay, I put this dot right up at the top here. That dot was the center of the wall that goes across this. That little dot was on the inside of the wall. So this piece of tape says this side is white and that side is blue. Yeah, I'll paint those doors later. Some of this is just going to be, it's just out of sequence. It's out of cycle. And I could be more efficient about it. So that I don't keep going back and forth. Like I paint something blue and then I stop and then I move on to the next bit, and that has to be gray, and then the next bit is blue again. We're going to be doing taping today. I haven't done that much, but some of these parts seem to be appropriate for using tape to at least get the lines right. This one I'm not sure about. Okay, I mean that's brown. That's the side of the bunk, and then the doorway. That this cutout is actually a door. It's supposed to be painted blue, so I'm going, and I would just freehand that usually, but I'm going to go, okay, I've got tape out. Let's try that. Let's see if that line gets any better with the tape, or does the paint build up on the tape, and then when I pull it off, it pulls the paint away. That could happen too. In some ways, getting the tape right into the corner it isn't terribly much easier than just painting the line and seeing what happens. Because I want it into the corner, but I don't want it up onto the wall. Painting a room is a lot easier because, I mean, you do this kind of taping there, but the precision, the tolerances are a little bigger because the parts are bigger, like the baseboards and door frames and stuff. So if this works, that should be okay. Get some blue paint out a little bit later. Yeah, how are we doing here? 11:30. So I got a little ways to go yet. I'm spreading stuff all over so I can't find it later. So it looks like I haven't really accomplished much today, but actually it's not too bad. I've got this sanded down. I'm going to paint this dark gray. Because this is the color of the hull. And this, if you see this at all, you want it to be the color of the hull. I'm going to repaint this the floor color. I might just do that next. Then I've got a whole lot of bits, little bits that need to be painted white. And that'll probably require a minimum of 2, possibly 3 coats. And so I'm going to put the first one on fairly thin. Okay. Colors of the rest of these a little later. So this is the getting painted white stuff. I'm going to paint the bottom of this gray now. Just so I can say that's done. All right. Let's go into the hull of the submarine way down here at the bottom. Yeah, lovely place to be. And then I'm going to paint the floor. And hopefully that will come out okay. And if it doesn't, then I'll just do it again until it does. This is the same color as that, but the paint built up here. And there were just spots that were rippled, and even more than they are now. There's still ripples in it. And different gloss color. It was just, yeah, just not good. The prep still isn't done. Still really uneven here. I brushed in this direction, and I think what happened is I got it nice and thin up here, but then I didn't pull it far enough over the last edge, or the paint might have dried a little bit too much before it got done there. Just that little bit helped. So yeah, I'm going to do that. And then after break, I'm going to put white base coats on parts of the galley. Okay. So let's start with the dark gray. Stuff scattered around here. The part I cut off. And just looking and saying, what is that thing over there? That was the top of the table I rejected. Just threw it away. Okay, now I want to use the really big brush on this for the most part, but right here, this is the edge that shows. And what I definitely don't want to do is get gray paint up on the top. So I'm going to paint that pretty carefully, maybe, with a smaller brush, and then get the larger brush out and finish it. Most of it will be like that, right? But it's right here that would go over the edge. Got caked up with paint. I'm going to have to put this in the thinner. It didn't get cleaned out well. So I won't use that brush. I think I can use this brush. So this is the first test of how painting goes today. We'll see how relaxing it is. That keeps happening, is that the plastic inner liner of the cap sticks there. And now it's upside down, and I'm going to get paint on my fingers. There's always something. Well, let's just hope that this goes okay. The important part is the edge here. The paint needs to go up to, but not over. Okay, this is a price is right moment in painting. We have many of those where the paint needs to go up to, but not over a certain part. Almost afraid to look. There isn't any reason why it should have gone over because I'm holding the brush horizontally, right? Away from the surface. It's okay. Let's not mess it up now. Yep, let's not mess it up by this paint. Sometimes these paints set up so incredibly quickly. It's doing now, but I think that will be okay later. So I'm just going to use the bigger brush now as I hold on to it at the bunks, just to get it like nice and even all across the bottom. Same edge as on the edge. Look at that. Okay. So there's that little spot there that is going to be opened up. That's where the stairwell goes in. And we'll just see how this looks after it dries. Hopefully it'll be just fine. This part will be virtually invisible except for right along this edge. So this edge is the only thing I'm concerned about right now. And as I find out, paint does set up very fast. Set that upside down here and then wash out the brush. Using that same gray paint on other parts later, the inside of the hull and along some of the edges. So for example, once this is done, this edge right here, that edge right there needs to be painted dark gray. This section here is the ballast tank. Once these are filled in, that'll be painted dark gray. This is part of the bunk. That's painted light blue. And this is part of the servo room, and that's painted green. Okay. So there's three colors on the bottom, but this edge, it represents the cutaway part. That's where it was cut. And that gets painted the dark gray color. To get this brush really clean, because I'm going to be using the same brush here on the floor. And let's put that right where I bring the brush across so that I can drip gray water all over it. I'm going to use some denatured alcohol to clean this out, just to make sure that the gray paint is out. If I were thinking, why would I do that? I would have painted the lighter color first and then the gray, right? That would have required foresight. I'm also going to be using this for the white paint because it's really soft bristled, and I can get a nice thin, fairly even coat, as much as one can, of the first coat of white on the little bits. So here I need more thorough cleaning. Paint gets in up to not the tip, but the base of the bristles. And then the whole thing gets stiff. So usually these are acrylics. I can just use water to wash them for the most part, but sometimes when they get like this, deeper cleaning, this one really does. This has like 3 colors of paint stuck up in its bristles. And I'm almost tempted to let it soak. Wow, there's a lot of paint built up in there. Yeah, I'm paying attention to cleaning your brush here. Need to do some more work on that sometime. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is repaint the floor of whatever this is. I don't think it's an officer's quarter because the bunks are 3 high. But it's maybe like a little recreation area or something. There's some tables there. There's a library. I don't know. Maybe it is. I didn't design the submarine, so I'm not really sure what their intent was. Okay. So get these brushes and this water out of the way so I don't, so the level of mess I make is just what is absolutely necessary, and not a mess that's unnecessary. Okay, well, that looks all scabbed and scarry and stuff now. So let's just say what happened is that the submarine, they're refinishing the floor in the submarine. This is used so much that it needed to be redone. That's the story. So after I paint the floor, and it hopefully goes okay. After I paint the floor, I'm going to maybe prep another piece or two until it's closer to noon, but I'm not going to do any more painting until after the break. There aren't too many pieces left. There's one bulkhead, That requires a fair amount of work. And then there's tables. The tables should go pretty quickly. And then there's a ton of these little bitty chairs. And I think what would be good is actually, I want to get some painting done today, especially the first coat of the white. Because it'll require more than one coat, and I want it to dry pretty thoroughly before I recoat it. Otherwise, it can get built up and uneven and things. So I think that other than painting maybe parts, if there are any that aren't in direct contact with the white, there's a little bit of light blue, but it makes no sense just to do that little bit there when I've also got this bit here to do. Okay, well, let's just see how this goes. I don't want to overbrush it, but I think as long as I don't mess with this anymore, and I'm just going to set it aside and away from the dust as far as I can get it, that might turn out okay. I'm going to hope for the best there. Okay, and then I'm going to clean this brush here, but I'm also going to give it a quick cleaning in the denatured alcohol because its next use is going to be white, and I don't want this lovely yellowish brown kind of color to bleed into the white. And I know it's not exactly clean, but none of that is sticking with the brush. Okay, so there's that. I'll set that there. I'm going to cover that with a dome of paper towel so I don't get dust all over it. These pieces here. And I'm going to start prepping pieces now. Just check this one. This is not bad. This is a doorway. This gets painted multiple colors. The insides of these doors lead to storerooms, so they're going to be painted white. The outside is painted light blue, which is the color of the mess hall. There's little bits of like excess flashing there that will be done. So this, I spent some time on this one because I needed to fit this one in order to see where the boundary between the white and the blue was on the other bulkhead. That goes in that one's done pile. This bulkhead is also pretty important. As you can see, this is where the bunks are, the crew quarters. This is the floor I just painted. There's lockers and what looks like a library. Those might be technical manuals. I don't know. But we'll call it a library. And then there's this thing up here, which isn't a clock. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Probably a general alarm. I mean, that might be it. It might be one of those things that sounds off when everybody's supposed to rush for general quarters. I don't know why you all go to the general's quarters, but, you know, that's what they say. Report to your stations immediately, that kind of thing. Okay. This edge here is part of the cutaway. So this will show right on the end, and that's the cutaway hull. The rest of this detail on this side really doesn't look too bad. The tabs, the tabs go into the part that I just painted, so I can't fit these yet, but I know that this excess plastic gets in the way, and that where these things are larger near the top here, where it hits the bulkhead, that those will definitely be in the way. So we'll get rid of that, along with, just little excess plastic here and there. This thing gets painted. This will be painted that light blue color, which is the color of the quarters. The shelves and the lockers probably should be painted a different color. The little hinges and things should be painted another color. The little edges of the books. So this piece here will be kind of a painting challenge, because it will show, it's right up in the front, and you'll be able to see it pretty clearly. There's nothing getting in the way of it. So we want to make this look pretty good. I'm probably I'll probably just paint the backs of the bookcases the light blue color, like these are shelves attached to the blue colored wall. And then the shelves, I'll probably just do in a black ink with a really fine tip pen. And then the book ends, I've got a red one and a black one. There's actually a white graphite. I might try to do some of them in white. I'm not sure. The white graphite pencil is kind of tempting. On the other hand, it leaves dust. So I'm not quite sure. They're really tiny, and it would be very hard to do with a brush. I could try it. I mean, you want these to be sort of different colored. This is one of those cases where this little tab in the back is not going to show at all. You will not be able to see this. But I think it might attach to another part, so I'm going to even it out just in case. Have the picture, down there. It doesn't, it's just open. So this goes against the doorway on this part here. It's there like that. You can see it. That's what finishes the door. I don't know what I'll do about the crack that leaves when they come together. That it will not. It'll show in a not very nice way. Okay, the back of this is where there's like a round table or something. So this is obviously meant to be something. This rectangle, like a blackboard or something like that. Probably that. I don't know. Did they have whiteboards already in 1963? I think I'm going to make it a blackboard. But there's this circle here, the mold, and this is right where you can see it. This is right in the very front. And so that needs to come off without harming the blackboard. You know, it's not one of those nice raised circles where I could just file off the circle. No, that's an indentation, so the whole thing is to be filed down to it. And if it weren't in such an obvious place, I could ignore it, but it's really bad right there. Going pretty slowly because I don't want to slip and mar the blackboard. At least it's fairly easy to see if you're succeeding or not because you brush away the dust. And if it's not filed, then it still has its original smooth surface, and yeah, it's still there. It's a particularly deep one too. This is an important part to prep. And for me, at least, it's really important to get rid of that circle right there. I think it's really a distraction. It just looks bad. There's another one in the back that's easier to take care of because it's further away from the front. It's harder to see, but this one is so visible. So recalcitrant. After I'm done with this piece, it'll be time to end the break, and when I come back, we do. When I come back from break, I'll probably do the white first coat on the galley pieces, just to get that going. It's not going to dry in time, I don't think, to get the second coat on yet this stream. I'm not sure. I want it to be pretty thoroughly dry. I don't want the coats to build up. What I'm going to have to do with this one here, given its location, is that now there's this little ridge here, top and the bottom of the blackboard. I don't want those to show, so I'm going to just file that kind of smooth so that there's not a ridge there. That's not hard to do. Do it on the other side. And then I'm going to give that a little bit of a go over with the really fine emery cloth to kind of polish that right at the front edge. Now I'm going to get rid of the one in the back. And that one's raised. Nice. Okay, that one's higher than the rest of the surface. So pretty much nothing else is getting filed other than that little circle. Why couldn't it be that way in the front? No. Thank you, Renwall. The Renwall designers are amazing. The way they build detail, like the lockers. Okay, the lockers that you can kind of see there, and the books on the bookcases. The Renwall manufacturing is not good. The Renwall manufacturing is really kind of poor, as you'll see when I get to the little chairs. These 11 tiny little chairs that go around the table here. The tables in the front. They were very badly done. and they're going to be a little bit of a challenge to fix because they're very, very small. A bit out. Not so important back there, but we'll just do that. And then just up in the front here, just to get some of the scratch marks off. Ridge there. I don't know if I should try even that out or not. It's not altogether bad to have that there. It doesn't look hugely out of place like a circle does. Okay. But if you can imagine, this rectangle would be painted flat black because it's a blackboard. It's definitely not a giant screen TV, right? Not in 1963 or whenever this was done. No, there's just file marks. And that will be what it will be. Okay. I'm going to clean these tools a little bit. Get rid of some of the trash. Dust protector back on some of the places. So after the break, I've got this pile of little pieces that go to the galley. All but one of these is a doorway, and that's going to be painted blue, but all but one of these is going to be painted white, and I'm going to be putting the first coat on, a fairly thin coat. Figuring out how to hold them in place. They're only painted on most of them are only painted on one side. One of them has to be painted on two sides. That will be a little bit of a challenge. We'll deal with that when the time comes. And yeah, I think that'll be okay. It's, this gray paint, just, you can see that there's a bright spot there where it's a little thicker. And I'm thinking once that dries, it will look okay. We'll see. Oftentimes, with some of these paints, like with the light blue, if you just let it be for a day, it levels off like this. This was all lumpy and uneven, and it just dried and it evened out. It leveled out really pretty nicely. This one was even more so. And you can see there's a tiny bit of unevenness in it, but not so much. Yeah, so I'm going to grab a quick break here. I will be back around 12:30 and put some white paint on stuff. Go from there. Put some white paint on stuff and then prep these tables. Okay, there's a bunch of these larger tables that go for the major crew. There's a staircase that's not too bad. And there are, you'll love this. I have to show these to you. They went out of their way to make hanging meat, like hams and a salami, I guess. And there's just a lot of flashing around it, so I'll have to file or sand that off. And then at some point, this will get painted white, the holder thing, get rid of a circle on there again. The meat will have to be painted ham and salami color. I'm not sure what that'll be. We'll find out. So yeah, after I paint things white, I'll be prepping these bits, putting them into here, the not done to the done pile, so that they can be primed. And then we'll take a look at these chairs. See these little bits there? They're just like little particles of dust floating around. Those are supposed to be chairs. And we'll see how that goes. Okay. Keep out of the way and make room for painting things white. See you in about a half an hour. Okay. Thanks for joining Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons so far. I hope you don't mind that I'm continuing to work on a submarine, but very soon we'll be having cobblestone street tiles. Maybe there will be a lot of them, and I'll get to paint them gray and then do highlights somehow or other, or dry brushing. I'm not sure how I'll do these. Haven't done them before. Trying to make them look like streets. See how that goes. So, see you in a little bit, and I will talk then about more about Dice and Dungeons and about submarines. I'm back. What a surprise. Yeah, I am back. These things, my breaks always take longer than I expect they will, because there's always something to do on break that isn't this. Yeah. So let's start with the floor. The floor is okay. And I wanted to check that so that I could get this tape off, because this was an experiment with tape. And I wanted to make sure that it didn't peel the rest of the paint off. And I'm going to need this piece as I do. Nice. Is that just like a right, of course, there's a spot there where the paint came off, and that will be visible. So let me grab one of these brushes, and I'm just going to touch that. I can't see up close with glasses on. They're trifocals, and there's like this little spot, tiny little spot on the trifocal that actually focuses up close, but in order to do that, I have to go like this. And that's not pleasant. So this is not bad. There's some little bits of, tiny little bits of flaw I can touch up just like that with tiny little bits of paint. That should dry smooth and even. These little chips in the front here. So this is going to be adequate for what I'm working on. Keep mentioning, and I'll continue to mention, that a large part of this show is definitely not a how-to show. This is not a how-to show because I'm not that good at it. But sometimes it's a how not to show, and I'm fairly good at that. And one of the things is how not to keep your workbench. Okay. I mean, you're seeing on the stream here, and I hope most of that was actually, I didn't even look up to see if it was on screen. I'm hoping it was, that for the most part, you can see that there's just this, but what you don't see is the rest of it and how stuff just kind of gets set down somewhere. And when it gets set down, it gets knocked over because it wasn't set down carefully, and on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Okay, this is the part that I had worked on quite a lot earlier. Yeah, and it still fits. We'll see. Sometimes after it's primed, they don't fit that well. This one I haven't fit yet. And it probably just as well that I'm trying it before I prime it, because then it'll be even worse. Is that I'm finding way more often than not, the tabs are either too big or in the wrong place or both. And they don't go in to the slots. So in this case, they're just too big. And what I often end up doing then, often meaning like all but like once, is I need to file them down. On 3 of the 4 sides. They end up fitting. And then after they're primed and painted, then I do a refit, to check again, because often, with some frequency, there's paint buildup. Even a little, if the fit's tight, even a little bit of paint that you get from the spray primer is enough to keep it from going into the slot again. Yep. Files in the sandpaper get a lot of use on this one. And it clicks in, so it's a tight fit. But that's there. And let me just show you how this works. This one then goes there, and that completes the doorway like that. The color difference is that's primed and that's not. And then you can see through this doorway too. There's a little room in the back there with some dials and stuff. And actually here, you can see right through that as well. Now I'm looking at this, and that's another spot. And I think this paint is still, I can still get a little bit of paint out of here because it's skimmed across the top. Is when I'm looking at this is the stairwell. And it makes sense, this is open, that it be the same color as the floor. Put paint on that. Nothing has to fit in here. Okay. You can only see it from one direction. So it's not only fine, but preferable that this be painted the floor color. So this one's been timed, and that has to be do some painting on there later. This one now pretty much kind of fits. Yep. So I'll put that in the to be primed box. And what I promised I would do now is set this aside and cover it with a paper towel because I don't want to get it all dusty and something will go wrong if I don't. One big paper towel will just cover it all now. So these are the to be cleaned up. These are the to be primed. I'll coming back to those later. But now I'm going to get to the, I need to paint some white paint on the parts of the galley. One of these parts gets painted blue because it's a doorway. Well, actually it's blue and white. The combination. Well, it's just blue. It's closed doors. These get painted blue. Okay. So that just gets put aside. These are parts of the galley. These get painted white on one side. This is the back wall of the cold storage. That's where the meat is. And the room temperature, that's where the shelves are. That's painted on one side. This has to be painted white all over. And then this needs to be painted white on both sides. Okay. So I think, just see if this is going to work. The edges, okay, these edges are not supposed to show. So if this goes into the sticky tack a little bit, I think I can get both of these on one of them. I want to do it the other way though. This is the open side and I'll be painting, kind of that way. I don't want to be painting up into this and get globs of paint in there any more than I need to. And get two of these on this one. The detail on here is really cool. I mean, there's like little spice canisters and a shelf with something on it. A bread box there. The cupboards have little knobs on them. I think I've mentioned this before. What I'm going to try to do with this extremely tiny, fine-tipped red pen is the knobs and the cabinet edges are going to be standard 1960s red trim on the white. Okay. So that'll work there. This one, again, the edges aren't going to show because those get covered up. Now I'm going to set here. Try to get the paint on here thin. I want to get it thin so I don't cover up the detail, like the handles on the pans. Okay. This one, again, is just painted white. Maybe I'll see if I can get this one on here too. I only got two of these, so make do with what they are. Okay, those will hold. These will hold pretty well for the light brushing. These two bits, this has to be painted on both sides. So what I'm going to grab are some alligator clips here. These off. These were painted blue on one side. Then it has to be painted dark gray underneath and dark gray on this side. So this is just going to go in the dust-free area. This one is dark gray on the bottom on both sides, but this is the bulkhead on one side of the servo room. So that gets painted green, the same color as the torpedo room in the sail. But for now, They're just going to be set aside. And what I'm going to do is grab alligator clips and like for this table, I can clip it right on just that. That goes into a little hole, and I should be able to paint the rest of that white. And then I'm going to try to do the same thing with this by clipping onto one of these tabs. This one's a little more in the center. And then I should be able to paint the whole thing. Okay. One side of it, this side gets cemented in, so I'll try not to paint that, because if I do, I'll have to scrape the paint off anyway, because that goes in this slot between these two walls here, like that. So there'll be some unpainting, scraping paint off of both of these pieces. I can't avoid getting paint in the slots and things, but just very carefully scraping or sanding it off so that they fit again. And they might fit tightly enough, I might not even have to cement them, which would be good, because if I don't have to cement them, I don't have to worry about the paint dissolving and becoming yucky. It's dissolved paint everywhere. So these will get painted white there. This is primed on the side that shows the doorway, but that gets painted a different color. So it's going to stay in the I have been primed, and I'm waiting for paint container. Once these are all primed, then I'll just put them back in here, because this one's easier to use. It's got a lid that I can move things around in, and you can see what's in it. And but I only have one of those. Anyway, yeah, there. I think I am ready to begin putting paint on. And on one hand, it would make sense to use a little brush like this, but the paint doesn't go on evenly with these because it's just small. So let me practice a little bit. This brush. Hoping to do is with this really nice broad but very soft bristle is get the paint in there and be able to just do like that, so that even though it's a fairly thin layer, it is even. Okay, so it's not too streaky. And then I'll need a second coat, and hopefully, with random streaks, the light streak will be where the dark streak is on the first coat, and vice versa. I hope that works, because cleaning the paint off of these later is going to be a chore. But I want to make sure it doesn't puddle in these corners. So I might end up having to use a small brush to dip paint out. So I'll keep this handy in case I have to do that. See if that's the right one. Yeah, either one of these two would probably work. Let's use this one. All right, it's white paint time. These are really important pieces because of the detail. They're really cool, and I want to make sure that they come out well. Now I get some clean water here, because if the paint gums up on the brush, I want to be able to clean it off fairly quickly. And then once these are painted, the first coat, I'm going to set them aside, and I'm going to continue doing prep work on the rest of these pieces so that I can get them primed. Because except for the chairs. The chairs are just too small to even bother priming, as you will see when I get to them. Then it's just a matter of getting the right colors on the right pieces, and in some cases painting some detail on them. But these pieces of the galley are really important because they are the galley, and they have a lot of detail. I think they're very, very cool, and I want to be able to make them look good. So let's just start putting paint on here and see how it goes. And I'm less concerned about streaking than I am about puddling. So like, yeah, right down in there there was a puddle because it's just this crevice, and when you brushed into it, it actually formed like a little bubble. So having this other brush here, it's not bad. I just want to get them even now. So a second coat will probably do what needs to be done to make them look okay. Under the shelf. Yeah. So this little brush is good for getting the puddles and the uncovered spots. So that's not too bad. I'd say it's not, well, we'll see what it looks like when the second coat goes on, but again, I'm wanting to get a thin coat of paint and let additional coats give it a uniform color rather than putting paint on heavily and ending up with, total loss of detail. Yeah, those are being adequate. Let's do this one. These cupboards. The faces of the raised parts of those cupboards will have to be painted some sort of color. Maybe I'll do them in red, maybe black. I'm not sure. The hanging meat will need to be painted meat color. I have to look through my color chart. I have no idea what color those will be. Keeping this clean as the paint dries in it. Well, let's just do the really hard one next. Just get paint in there, right? Paint in there, and then try to make it look even. Those bristles are going every which way, but I guess that's okay. What's important is to get the paint on as evenly as possible so that there aren't a lot of brush marks. Get rid of the puddles. It's covered where it needs to be covered. This is actually turning out okay. Painting the detail is going to be quite a challenge. I'm going to get out this little brush again and just clean up right in the edges of some of these things. Like here, there's a puddle, okay, where the brush was going in a certain direction, and there's a little paint buildup. Okay, I think with a second coat might be all these need. And it's really tempting to do that yet today. This paint dries pretty quickly, but I don't know. We'll see. See how things are in 45 minutes. And then I've just got two pieces left to first coat. This one is on alligator clip because it needs to be white on both sides. These are storage shelves that go in the side of this side. So this part needs to be white. This part doesn't, because this gets inset into the gap here. This is the cold storage side. There's no detail on that at all. I don't know why not. But we'll just do this. And then the second coat I'll put across the other way. But I don't want to coat it too heavily right now, because this has a chance of looking like even. And then this is the table that I modified to sit behind the coffee urn. This is the side you can see. And actually you can see underneath it as well. So I'm going to paint under there. And I should use the little brush for that, because the big brush doesn't get in there. And this will get a nice second coat. This one, like all of these, hopefully the second coat will be enough. If not, I mean, just even doing this, just touching it up a little bit, suggests to me that a second coat is going to be enough, and that will end up looking okay. All right. They look pretty streaky right now, but that's intentional because I wanted the paint to be a thin layer so it didn't cover up the detail. It's needed, I think, and not having too many puddles or anything like that on it. Maybe they're checking, huh? But the detail hasn't disappeared, so that's good. All right, those need to dry before I mess with them again. And now I think really in terms of priority, getting the parts that are not prepped yet, the ones that just have flashing and mold marks and all sorts of making them unusable and unpleasant to look at, unpresentable. I think that needs to come next. So I'm going to get these things well out of the way here. And then get the files and the sanding paper out. and continue to work on these bits that need to be prepped. This brush holds a lot of paint. I'm not sure. I might be using it a little bit later. I might do a little more dark gray on some of the bulkheads. A lot of it depends on how quickly I can get these pieces prepped. You would think that they go pretty quickly, but some of them are just really awful. The tables are not bad. Okay. There's a little bit of flashing around the edges, but you can see for the most part, there's not like no circles on the top. Just this bit here, where I talked about that before, where they were attached to the tree, and that's just real easy to take off and get nice and flat and smooth. The thing about these tables, and we'll see how this goes, is that these little round bits need to go into little round holes in the floor. So I'm going to clean up all 5 of them. I think they need to be kind of interchangeable. So I'm going to clean up all 5 of them, and then I'm going to test fit them in the floor. And if they fit, then I'll be making really quick progress. And if they don't, cut that off a little further. Then I need to be, I'll be filing all those little pins on the bottom until they fit in the holes. I'd cleaned the paint out of the holes earlier. I did that on Monday. This is not part of the floor that I just repainted. Okay, this is a part of the floor that had been painted last week and still looks okay. There's a little touching up that ended up being done, but not much. But we'll just see. I mean, so far, taking off those little tabs and making sure that this is smooth, because, you know, one side looks like the other side. The bottoms of these tables, this part here, basically that, gets painted brown, and then they want the top of the table to be painted white. So the top and the edges will be white. Again, that'll be a two coat kind of thing, probably. I'll just brush across the top with the big brush and then make sure I get it around the edges. I don't think they had tablecloths, right? But I think that, you know, they want the top of the table to look white just because. I'm a little bit tempted to use an ivory, so it's a little bit off-white, but yeah, that might actually just make them look dirty rather than not bone white. So I'm just going to say that they're made, the tabletops are made out of the same porcelain-covered metal that the galley that is going to be painted all white is. That's the story I'm sticking with. So I've been told, and I don't know if this is true, because, you know, I thought today I might be painting a kind of commemorative nines coin, and I'm not. I'm doing Submarine Wednesday on a Wednesday for the first time in 3 weeks. Friday, I might have some minifigs that need to be done. And these will be figures that will be used in our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So let me then, you know, talk a little bit about that. This is my standard monologue about Dice and Dungeons. Dice and Dungeons is a D&D campaign group. Relatives and friends got together over a year ago to play a Dungeons and Dragons campaign in a world that was created by our dungeon mistress, Alexis. And we play that, and early on thought, well, people stream their D&D campaigns. Let's do that too. And it just got more and more elaborate. So right now we have a whole studio where we do our D&D campaign, and that streams with a live chat 3 Sundays a month, starting at 2:00 Eastern Daylight Time. And anybody who sees this and is interested in maybe checking it out, please either watch the Twitch or catch it on YouTube, or even as a podcast later. And the podcasts work because we are just talking all the time. We are very entertaining, even during combat, where we are moaning and complaining about our dice rolls and how we're almost dead, and how, well, there's always our bard throwing out insults and saving our party that way. Anyway, yes, our D&D campaign is the heart of Dice and Dungeons, and you're very welcome and encouraged to check it out. And what happened was, as we progressed, our sets became more and more elaborate, and we went from just a 1x1 inch grid. Originally, it was just even black lines on white, I think. Then we went to colored ones that showed woods and oceans and different kind of settings. And then we got a 3D printer. There's 3 of them now. There's 3 3D printers behind me and another one over there. Said, well, let's, instead of just printing out ant traps, which was one of the very first things made. Not for sale. We're not doing Etsy ant traps. So, I suppose we could. Everything's possible, right? And it was, let's start doing scenery so that we can, both for our own use, our own amusement, and for anybody who's watching the stream, the sets just look a little better. So started printing out set pieces, columns, and dungeon walls and things. And that turned out to be pretty cool. And then we got more 3D printers to print out yet even more stuff. This is a small table. This is like an officer's table or something. It's very tiny, right? But there are 8 chairs around it, around this little table. You compare it to the crew tables here. Okay, it's much smaller, but there are 8 chairs around this, which tells you about the scale of this submarine. When you put 8 people around this table, there's not enough room to eat, I don't think. There might be, but you'd have to hold the plates on your laps. There's hardly enough room, I think, to put 8 coffee cups on it. But, I didn't design the George Washington Polaris launching prototype submarine. So I guess I have, who am I to say why the table is so little and inadequate for its purpose? But Dice and Dungeons, it got more and more elaborate, and our dungeon tiles became more elaborate. I'm going to show you some in just a little while, because I'm talking about Dice and Dungeons. We started doing minifigs, and then it was, well, if we're sitting around and painting all these dungeon tiles and these minifigs, why don't we stream that too? Because everybody streams everything. And that's how Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons started, is just streaming us painting. It started out with Nicole and I jointly doing this, doing dungeon tiles for our D&D campaign. And then eventually it ended up just being me, and I paint dungeon tiles, and I will be soon once we get more of these street prototypes done, and minifigs. And minifigs might come back on Friday because we need them for our campaign. I'm told that we will be we're going into sewers, apparently. So there was a lot of sewer tile painting a couple of weeks ago. Those got finished. now we have to deal with evildoers, bad guys, combat in the sewers. So I'm going to be painting some of those maybe as soon as Friday. It's a little bit of a cheat, I guess, in a way, in that because I'm painting the minifigs, I know what we're running into, or at least what they're going to look like. I don't know what their powers are going to be, though. No. Deadly. Okay, this is a tiny little table here. There's just one chair at this, so somebody gets to sit alone at a table that's okay. There's one person sitting alone at a table that's more than half the size of a table with 8. That just doesn't seem fair, does it? Maybe there's more chairs for this table, but they're stored somewhere. You know, they're not in part of the model. And then this is a round table. I don't know why there's a round table. Probably why not? We have a square one, might as well have a round one. Get all the geometric figures in here. There's 2 chairs around this. Again, that seems pretty excessive compared to the 8-chair table. But there it is. And I need to test fit all of these. And so as soon as I'm done with this staircase, which also needs to be test fitted, I will be test fitting them into the floor of the mess hall. And this particular piece of plastic on the edge of the circle seems to be like twice as hard as all the rest. Weird. Yes, so that's the story about Dice and Dungeons. So please, if you feel at all interested, check out our Dungeons and Dragons campaign 3 Sundays a month with live chat on Twitch, and then later for your amusement and enjoyment on YouTube and a podcast. And then you'll get to meet our characters, our D&D characters, including mine, Ulset Ralph, the Furbog Fighter. And understand why we're doing these, not the submarine, but the dungeon tiles that I've been working on periodically. And the minifigs that I will be going back to soon. I know that everybody the reason the submarine happened, there's 2 reasons for it. One is that there weren't any dungeon tiles or minifigs to paint, and I needed to fill the time with something. And then the second reason is that I built this kit originally when I was in grade school in the 1960s, when this kit came out originally. And I wanted, after I retired, I thought, well, what am I going to do with my time? Let's build models. Of course, I didn't ever have any time for some reason after I retired to actually do that. But this was one of the models I really wanted to do. And it was difficult to find these in any kind of condition. You can buy them like not only in the original box, but in original condition, that is unstarted with the parts still in the cellophane, that kind of thing, for an incredibly huge price, because they're pretty, they were made in the 60s, so the ones you're going to get are kind of old. But what I was able to do is I bought one that was started, and then I looked at the pictures, and they said, as is, we can't guarantee. We didn't do an inventory. It was like, there's a lot of little parts, and they're off the tree, just scattered around in the bottom of this box with and the box had a gap in it. And so it was, okay, well, maybe I better buy 2 of these, because if I get 2 of them, then it's likely that I can get enough parts from the 2 to make that work. And that one was started, and there's no guarantees at all as is. And the parts that were started were really badly started in terms of painting and gluing. So I ended up getting a third one. So there's actually 3 of these here. And it's good that I had at least 2, because although this one appears to have all the parts, some of the parts were unusable. There were some parts that were so badly warped, bent. I mean, it just, you set them down and they'd rock back and forth. They were very badly curved that they couldn't be used. And I would have had to go through this laborious process of pretty much like steaming them and flattening them and hoping to get them done. But it was easier to just go to the other model, one of the 3 that I bought, one of the other of them. And since 2 of them were George Washington's, so they are identical in terms of the parts. And the other one was an Ethan Allen, which was done a little bit later. So there are some differences, but all the interior parts are the same, at least in the upfront part. I was able to find replacements. And as I'm looking ahead to the control room, the next section up, I'm going to have to be doing the same by going through the other models to find parts that are in better condition. For example, I know that there are a couple that are like instrument panels. They're really highly detailed control panels. But the mold, when the injection mold was done, didn't fill. And so they have a divot in them. So you've got this really nice control panel, and in the center it's caved in, where when there wasn't enough plastic in it, and when it cooled, it shrank and there. So I'm hoping that was a flaw that was just unique to that particular kit, and that when I go to the other 2 kits, that I'll be able to find at least one part that works. Okay, this staircase has this big glop on the bottom here, and the way it's put together, it will actually show. You'll be able to see that. So I'm going to get out some of my agglomeration of miscellaneous sandpaper bits here, set some down and rub it until it's gone. Yeah, the problem with this is that I didn't get it flat. I'm just going to do it this way. So this little bit is taking longer than I expected it would, because that part on there is really not good. I think I'm actually going to file it. There's a lot of excess plastic there on the bottom. Yeah, this is working okay. It's almost done. And then after this is cleaned off, and I'm not sure, I think I might polish it a little bit just to do it, because I'm taking a lot of plastic off here and leaving little gouge marks. It's, watch it disappear. Form a uniform smooth surface covered in uniform smooth plastic dust. My special 1600 grit polishing thing. Okay. So you can now see that it's a staircase. A little bit of flashing on the bottom there that will be distracting later on, so I'll get that off. Let me, first of all, clean this up a little bit. Oh, oh my, yeah, I almost forgot this. I'll do that before I start fitting because it's part of this. In cold storage, there are hanging hams and salami. And they molded some, they went out of their way to mold that, right? So, of course, there's a little circle here in the thing from which they're hanging, and that's definitely inauthentic. Start by filing the front of this away until the circle mark is gone. I have spoken many times about how really annoying that is to have those. There were a couple of those on the fronts of the storage cabinets, kind of near the bottom, and they're inside the detailing of the shelving, and there's just nothing that can be done about it. I mean, it would take fine tools and steady hand, plastic filler, sanding and filing. That is well beyond my capability to make them go away. So I'm hoping that when it comes down to it, they just won't show. This one seems to be pretty deep little inset circle here. It's still not gone. Fortunately, there is a lot of plastic on the bar from which the hams are hanging. I check now with some frequency to make sure that it, that I don't file away terribly much more than I need to. Still hanging in there. Finally seems to have given up. It's going to be painted that porcelain white color, probably. And give it a little bit of a polish there. So when all is said and done, there will be yet a little bit more white that needs to be painted. Another problem with this piece is that I call it flashing, but basically when it was injected molded, the molds had a little gap between them. And so if you look carefully against maybe a white background, you can see that there's just plastic, a thin layer of plastic all around the edges of every bit of this piece. And those can't be there when it's painted. It will just look really weird. Oh, I need to go around the edges of everything here. The holding part, the bar that goes across the top. And then especially around the hanging meat to get that off. These pieces they're very soft. And you just touch it with the file and the plastic disappears. Some of them seem to be a little harder. So there's lots of inconsistencies. I might just try to trim this way rather than with the foil. These are just the rest of the pieces that go into the mess hall and the galley. And I want to get these done today so that I can prime them. The ones that are primable, at least. This is about, some of them are very tiny. And then I use a spray can primer. These. And they they're so little that they actually kind of just go flying. And I'm reluctant to tape them down. Because when the primer would get on the tape. Anyway, I might with some of these. Well, some of these need to be primed on the top and the bottom. Right? So then do the bottoms of the tables and then flip them over and do the top. And I don't know, I might just do that. I might just try to like fold over some painter's tape or something. Or maybe I'll just spray them and then catch them. So let me just put this against a light background so I can see how it's coming. Scraping this away rather than filing it, because there's really no clearance for the file. And it's just that flashing material that needs to be scraped away so it doesn't show from the front. This is one of those weird little details that the designers put into the model. You know, let's have some hanging ham. That'll be great. That'll look really cool. And then they stuck it behind a door. And the door is open, but odds are that once this is assembled, he won't be able to see this. So I'm going to go through the trouble of painting it. I'm going to paint this white. That's easy enough. And then paint these ham and salami color. And it gets cemented onto two little prongs on the side of one of the bulkheads. And then we'll never see it again. It's just the way this model is. So this doesn't need to be fit anywhere because it just hangs on a couple of pegs. And let me get these sharp instruments out of the way. And I'm going to call back the floor. This is the floor of the galley, the mess hall, a little bunk room with little extra tables and chairs and stuff. And let's see if these things fit. These tables, brown on the bottom, white on the top, go between these brown things. These brown things are the benches on which dozens and dozens of sailors sit. Nope, doesn't fit. So I'm left with the choice of either I can file down the little prongs on the bottom. I can try to enlarge the holes in the deck. I'm going to actually try both. I'm going to just make sure that these are clean. Okay, that there's not a lot of residual paint or something in them. I did this once before, but we'll just check again. And then rather than try to enlarge these holes, because who knows what kind of problems that will cause. Then I'm going to file down the little pegs on the bottoms. So that they fit. And they need to actually be able to fit in any one of these 5 spots. So that'll be a little tedious. After I file these down, I will test it in each one of the 5, because after they're primed and painted, I'm not going to be able to number these things on top and bottom to be sure that they're going in the right spot. Okay. I'm going to assume here that these all are not going to fit. Because they all have pretty much the same oversized pegs. Yeah, it'll take care of all of them. Before I go on to that, this is where the little table goes here. Those are the ones with the 8 chairs around them, and of course that doesn't fit, right? This little square table goes here. Actually go in okay. Maybe clean those holes up a little bit. And then the round table goes here. That one fits just fine. Yeah, one thing. Get the tiny little thing here. This is just the right size for these holes. Really careful with these little bitty parts, because there's a really good chance I could end up losing them. If they dropped on the floor, they might be gone forever. There. That's where those go. And there's places for chairs around them. The chair-like objects that we will see later. I need to clean up the pegs on these tables, though, because they're way too big. So I'm just going to put this back here, put my dust cover back over it, and file these. Yeah, so it looks like what's going to happen today is that I'll come close to finishing these. I don't know how much I have to take off. It's better for them to be a little too small, because they get cemented in. Cement will melt the plastic and weld it into the little holes. And there's also the bottoms of the table. I can even put a little cement on that. Clear off a little of the paint right down the center, and that will be enough to hold. So that's really not an issue. The thing is, they don't go in to the little holes. They can't use them at all. Yeah, the Renwell design is amazing. Okay, in terms of the detail and how the parts are supposed to go together. The box even celebrates itself that way with the no-show cementing and things like that. But whoever manufactured these things for them, let's just say this was way before continuous quality improvement. And given the size of this kit, I don't remember. It must have been really expensive at the time. Only in today's dollars, I bet you were paying something like 50 or 60 bucks or something for this. I'm surprised my parents bought it for me. It must have been like a special gift, like a birthday or something. But yeah, I know given the likely cost of this kit, I'm really surprised that the manufacturing quality is so poor. And it's not, it's not just specific to this one kit. The chairs are really very badly molded, very, very badly molded. And I thought, well, let me look at the other kits, because I got 3 of them, and see if any of the others are better, and they're not. Let's see if I did enough this time. Well, as if they're not aligned with the holes. Okay, yeah, I can kind of snap it in. Okay. Just barely, right? There's still a little bit of paint in those holes. That's kind of grabbing these. See if it, I want to make sure it fits in all of them. Yeah, this one back here is still a little too large. Test it in one more. I'm not going to decide it. I'm not going to be testing them in all 5 because they're going to need some touching up later anyway. Okay, so this one goes in the to be primed box. Now I know what I need to do with the other 4. What I need to do with the other 4. I'll weigh about 15% of the surface area of these little pegs. Thing too, that was the stairs. They're much safer there in that little box than they are floating around on the table. Like I said, it's better to have these be a little too small because there's plenty of surface area for the cement. But if they're too big, then they're not usable. So there. We'll see if that's enough. But when I did this kit originally, I'm not quite sure how this worked. Because if these parts, this is an original 60s kit, right? So the parts must have been pretty much the same then as they are now in terms of not fitting. I'm not sure. Did I take the care? Maybe I did. Maybe I took the care necessary to pre-fit all of these to make sure that they fit before I painted them, and then again to fit them before I cemented them. Or did I just, okay, well, the cement melts the plastic, so if the plastic's melted, I put enough cement on them, which was easy to do with the tube cement back then. Yeah, they'll just squish in through this layer of molten plastic. It's probably what I did. Okay. So you can see how that fits. That actually looks pretty decent. Yeah. Use the same procedure here on these three. So these will get painted brown underneath, the same color as the bed frames and the benches that the crew sit on at these tables. This whole part under here will be painted brown. And then the table tops are painted the same white as the galley fixtures. So these won't be difficult to paint. They'll be difficult to hold on to while they're being painted because they're pretty small. But if I can get these done, it looks like I'm not going to get to the chairs today. That's not too bad. The chairs present their own challenge, and they're being painted a unique color. The color chart, such as it is for the model, let me just show it to you. The color chart is totally worthless. Usually you have, on a model like this, you have very specific painting directions. No, what it says is paint the tops of the bunks white, paint the galley fixtures white, but it only points to 2 out of the 3. There's no color chart at all for any of the rest of this, except for the tabletops, okay, white. And the chairs are green. But I'm not going to paint them the same green as the walls, even though it's the same color chart. If you looked at the color chart here, it says green. Green, right, for the bulkhead. I'm going to paint these a darker green color because I don't know if you visit a naval museum ship or something, they have this kind of dark forest green leatherette on their chairs. So that's what I'm going to use. I have some nice dark greens. So those chairs can be done anytime. A little bit later because I'm not going to be using the same paint colors. And if I have time, I'll show you one out of the little envelope because they are impressively badly done. See if this will fit. Well, yeah, see, I talked about losing things. I just knocked off the round table, and it is now down on the floor somewhere. And that fits nicely. And that's not good. I have to find that because that round table is a pretty prominent piece of the submarine. I had it sort of sitting loosely in the place where it will go. It was, in fact, one of the few pieces that fit without modification. And I picked it up and wasn't careful, and I knocked it down. So I will wait until after the stream because you don't need to hear me crawling around on the floor, looking under the workbench. I know it hit the floor. I heard it hit. But you don't need to watch the screen while I'm off screen crawling around on the floor looking for that piece. This is another one of those. This is not a how-to show. This is more of a how not to show. Well, that part was how not to be careful with tiny little pieces that are important to the model. Yeah, that was a how not to. That was a definite example of if you do this, don't do that. I'm getting close to being done with the second to the last large table. And then I've got the small table to do. I did take a little square table, which would be very difficult to find if it fell on the floor, and carefully put it into the to be primed box. I'm getting better at judging how much plastic to take off because that one fit pretty well too. They're fitting loosely, but that's okay because they'll get cemented in. Yeah. So there'll be just enough time to finish up these tables and then to do a recap of what has been done today, because actually stuff has been accomplished very slowly, very slowly, but kind of, persistently as the construction of this submarine goes along. And as I was saying earlier, there is some hope. There is some hope that we'll not have a complete submarine week, but that on Friday I'll have some minifigs to paint for use in our D&D campaign. So these will be figures that if you watch our campaign, either with live chat on Twitch 3 Sundays a month, Sunday at 2 Eastern Daylight Time, or if you catch it on YouTube, you will probably see those figures in action. And since they're probably bad, you'll probably see them, I hope, losing. Because if they win, then that means that that our characters don't, and that wouldn't be good. Okay, that was a little tight, but it fits. Yeah, I mean, it'll be okay after it's primed and painted. I'll need to do some additional sanding. Yep, square table, staircase, meat. I just got this little table to go. This is a smaller table with seating for 8. I'm guessing this is this table has to be for like high tea or something because it's so small. You couldn't get your food trays on it. They wouldn't fit. This one wasn't even close to fitting into the little openings that were designed for it. There's also a round table that, if you weren't watching, went flying onto the floor somewhere. So I've got some post-stream. I need to crawl around on the floor and find it, basically. The only good news there is that I actually am still capable of crawling around on the floor. Well, that's not the issue. Crawling around on the floor isn't the issue. It's getting up again after crawling around on the floor, and that could very well be the issue. But I can still do that. We'll find out. Hopefully, I'll be able to do that today. This is cool. The legs are not of equal height. Okay, there's an indentation, the leg, and then the little peg that goes into the hole. They're not in the same place on both legs. Cool. We'll just have to make that adjustment when I cement them in, I guess. Do that now while I'm filing. That might not work too well. This one's really hard to hold on to. Then the pegs are on the ends of legs and not on the bottoms of nice straight pieces of plastic. They probably won't fit yet, but there's always a chance. And if they do, then I can stop. And it goes here. Yeah, if I push down hard, they will go in. But at this point in the process, the unevenness of it, the legs aren't the same. I'm going to trim these a little bit more. What I'm going to do is do a little mid-century modern kind of thing and bevel the legs instead of being straight. They are going to have kind of a bevel to them. And then I'll be able to adjust them up and down when I cement them in, kind of as necessary. Otherwise, they're going to look weird. And I think I can pull this off. One of the cats is visiting and being quite persistent in wanting attention. Almost tempted to let him come up onto the workbench, but that would be a really bad idea. It's taking a little longer than I thought it would, just because of the nature of the way this is molded and not fitting. But as you can see, I just sort of like cone shaped it a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing to the other leg. And, it'll be a little bit rough. It won't be perfect, but it should fit, and it gives me more room to maneuver in terms of making this whole thing look okay when it's inserted and adjusted. Doesn't help that one leg was molded to be like 20% fatter than the other. But yeah, he really wants to be up here. Usually it's the other cat. Usually we have two cats. Usually it's the other one that comes to visit and demands attention. So it's a little bit odd that this one's here doing that. Maybe he wasn't able to get enough attention upstairs. We have some dogs. The dogs might have been annoying. Well, let me see how this looks. This will be the last bit because it's just about time to end. Yeah, the legs are not exactly the same, but I should be able to adjust it when I cement it so that they are even. Because this one's a little fatter than that one, but it'll work okay. So I'm going to just set that aside. This guy goes there. I fixed this floor. I did a whole lot of sanding and then repainted it, and it looks adequate now. I painted the bottom of this dark gray, and this is the only edge that matters, and it looks okay. The rest of this I just wanted dark because it's the same color as the hull. There's a little spot there that appears not to be dust, so I'll touch that up later. These are the bunks. This is the bunk deck. Okay, and this edge will show later. I was able to measure and tape off. This is white on this side and blue on that side, and this tape is just letting me know where the color goes. Oh my, that was amazing. Our cat jumped all the way up to here. I'm going to cover this up real quick. But there he is. There's one of our cats jumped all the way up to the top of the workbench, almost cut its paw open with the X-Acto knife, and now wants to say hello to me. Yeah, there we are. That was just a real shock. On that note, on the note of the cat attack, I'm going to be signing off and hopefully not losing any more pieces while my little friend up here pays a visit. Say hi. Hey, we'll see you Friday, where if worse comes to worse, I will be continuing with the submarine, and if not, I will be painting some minifigs that will later appear on our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Thanks for joining. Relaxing painting. Oh, there you get to see cat butt. Oh, there he goes. Yeah, relaxing painting with dice and dungeons and kitty. See you Friday. Thanks.